Oh goody, more Pac-Man. Oh god, more Atari. Dear lord, more Pac-Man on Atari? That's never a good combination, or is it? Well, first off, of course it's a good combination, because shortly after the bombastic Pac-Man on 2600, they made a Ms. Pac-Man port on the system that was far superior. Not only that, but Pac-Man also graced other Atari formats, including the Atari 5200 as well as the Atari 8-bit computer line, which is what we're looking at today via the Namco Legendary DLC portion of the Atari 50 compilation, which also includes ports of Galaxian, Dig Dug, Xevious, and even the Atari published arcade versions of Dig Dug and Xevious, which is the highlight of that whole deal, except, yeah, you know what? Xevious on 7000 being a one-button deal? Kind of a deal breaker for me. I guess nobody told Digital Eclipse about the difficulty switch toggling between one-button and two-button gameplay, which was possible in the original 700 release, but hopefully they fix that in a future patch. Anyway, it's Pac-Man, a classic 1980 arcade maze game that we all know and eventually grew to tolerate as time went on. You should know the deal by now. Eat all the dots in the maze to move on to the next round, avoid the ghosts while they're chasing you, eat the power pellets to turn said ghosts blue and eat them for bonus points, and the cycle continues until you eventually run out of lives and the game ends. It's simple, straightforward fare that is immediately recognizable because this 8-bit port does a fine enough job of converting the arcade original with a slight adjustment. So usually with ports of these vertically inclined arcade games to older video game hardware, they usually either just push the gameplay to the side and fill the void with your scores and lives counter, or they'd stretch the image to fit the resolution of the television screen, or just leave it as is and generally fill the void with artwork and stuff. Well, Atari did something unique with the 8-bit version in that they just made the maze wider to fit the horizontal scale, and thus you have a much larger maze with a lot more dots to eat. So yeah, you're not exactly getting arcade perfection in terms of maze recreation, but it's a unique solution, and at the very least, the game still looks the part, which is more than what I could say for Pac-Man's take on 2600. In any event, 8-bit Pac-Man plays about as well as you'd expect. All the ghosts behave in their usual patterns, Pac-Man feels pretty solid to control, there are no abnormalities to be found beyond the stretched maze. This was a port of Pac-Man that the developers had time to hammer out and make the best home port possible on the hardware they had available. Curiously, both the 8-bit and 5200 versions, while similar on the surface, do boast some fundamental differences. The 8-bit computer versions generally play a bit slower, while the 5200 version features slightly faster gameplay and also includes the arcade intermissions missing from the computer versions. So in some sense, this would make Pac-Man on 5200 the superior format, save for the fact that it's on 5200 and you have to use one of their infamous joystick things, while the 8-bit versions had a proper joystick that played better. But Atari 50 nullifies that anyway, so you can play both versions without issue. Visually, Pac-Man looks the part on 8-bit hardware. You've got the maze layout, Pac-Man animates fairly well, the ghosts got a bit of a redesign and one of them is even the wrong color, but other than that, you can look at what's on screen and go, yep, that's a Pac-Man. It even sounds the part. It has the familiar Pac-Man jingle, the sound effects do a fair approximation of the arcade sounds, and they all sound fine. No complaints in that regard. Overall, Pac-Man on Atari 5200 and Atari 8-bit computers is a fine conversion of the arcade classic on Atari hardware. If nothing else, it more than made up for the botched thing on 2600, but neither version was perfect either. The 8-bit version was slower and lacked cutscenes, while the 5200 version had a bad joystick. Although playing this version on Atari 50 with a proper gamepad does highlight the improvements made to the console port. Still, this was as good as Pac-Man got on Atari hardware until the recent 700 conversion, and actually holds up quite nicely despite being outclassed by later conversions. All in all, this version's worth a try or two.